So I got interested in the Bobath concept because it helped me begin to challenge and understand those complex patients that have complex movement problems. The Bobath concept is all about changing how people move. It's about movement performance. It's about returning them or helping them regain the movement that they had pre-injury, pre-lesion. And so it's more than just practicing a task. It's not about just learning to do a task and just practicing that. It's how do you do that task? How do you sit to stand? How do you step and walk? And so the Bobath concept taught me about how to manipulate sensory input so that I could help the patient change their motor output. And it revolves around the clinical reasoning and treating the individual. So it helps me problem solve through the clinical presentation that is in front of me. And I've always been really interested in education. So I became interested in the Bobath concept, and then I went down the path of becoming a Bobath instructor. And so I've traveled the world, and every patient is different. No matter what country I'm in, no matter what language we're teaching in, and so I over this time have had lots of experiences of different patients in different cultures, but they all want the same thing. They all want to move more easily, more fluid. They want to try and get back to how they were living their life before. So the Bobath concept gives me a different way of looking and analyzing a person's movement problem. And my goal as becoming a Bobath instructor was to help other therapists begin to be able to explore the potential in their patients as well. So after about 20 years of being a clinical neurological physiotherapist, I decided that perhaps going back into postgraduate education would be a good idea. So I went back and did my master's and then went on to do my PhD. My PhD studies revolved around clinical reasoning. So understanding why a therapist does what they do rather than just what they do. So clinical reasoning is the very essence of clinical practice. It's how we understand the clinical presentation, how we make hypotheses about why the person is moving the way they're moving, and then seeking to change that, to influence how that person is moving, to help them do the things and return to the tasks, the activities that they want to do. So my PhD studies focusing around clinical reasoning goes very much hand in hand with what I do in clinical practice and what I do in terms of clinical education, in terms of helping therapists figure out what is going on, how they can align the neurophysiology, the medical diagnosis with the clinical presentation, and then how do they then seek to change that. I also wanted to make a contribution to the evidence base. As a clinician, one can be very critical of the NeuroRehab evidence base because how we conduct our studies isn't really aligned with clinical practice. However, running research is really challenging, it's really hard, and it's really hard to do well. But I felt that there needed to be a more open dialogue between clinicians and researchers so that we can maybe try and bring a clinical voice to that research environment.